Welcome to Wellywood Wargaming, where the grim dark never sleeps. Crack open a bottle of wild snake and spark up a low stick as we take a journey down Underhive.
Howdy Hive Scum and welcome back. It's been quite a while since I last did a question and answer session, so I put out a social media post last week and the community has responded, giving me tons and tons of really good questions that I can answer for you today. So let's get into it. So starting of course with my awesome patrons, Incy asks, I would love to know your take on running a pure Zone Mortalis campaign. Terrain balance can be too swingy in my opinion, and it seems Zone Mortalis could resolve the issues. This is a really interesting question actually, and I would say that since 2017, obviously the re-release of Necromunda in 2017 came with a set of Zone Mortalis tiles, cardboard tiles. If any of you out there have got those, I personally think they're pretty awesome. Initially, when this was re-released, a lot of people that played Necromunda back in the day were really not keen on the lack of verticality and 3D terrain. Once I actually got the box set and started playing it though, I actually really enjoyed this style of play. It felt like Necromunda crossed with Hero Quest, and honestly, I ran my first few campaigns on purely these tiles. I later expanded that into Bad Zone Delta, so if any of you out there were lucky enough to pick up the Bad Zone Delta tiles, they're pretty awesome, and I still use them to this day for different scenarios and just to sort of switch things up sometimes with 3D terrain, because I agree it's nice to play different versions of Necromunda, and I actually do feel like the 2D tiles can really offer you a very different experience. That said, a whole campaign on a 2D board can be a little bit samey and a little bit dull at times, I think, and certain scenarios play into this really well and some really do not. Also, some gangs are really going to benefit from playing on these tiles, not least close combat gangs like, Corpse Grinders, I was going to say Van Saar then, Corpse Grinders and Goliath, things like that, who can progress along the board without getting shot up. This is a real issue. So I think the answer to this question really is use them to mix things up a little bit. Ideally, if you are going to do it for an entire campaign, make sure the gangs in your campaign aren't entirely close combat focused melee brutes, because they will just win most of the games, I think. So anyway, I hope that answers your question, Incy. Belly asks, how many games do you have in each phase? Do you decide as you go or do you pre-plan? Yep, normally when I do a campaign document, I will usually put the actual campaign weeks in it with dates on it if I can be bothered. It depends on the type of campaign, how many players are in it as well, because obviously if you've got a larger campaign with lots and lots of players, it can be difficult coordinating things, and you really do need to have some dates in there in place, otherwise people kind of take the piss. Some people naturally have busier lives, children and whatnot, and they can't play as often. So you've got to balance that and juggle it with the players that are more readily available to play. So it really does depend on your actual playing group. If everybody's available to play every week, then maybe 4 weeks for a phase is a good sort of thing. Otherwise, you might want to extend that depending on how often your players can play. So I hope that answers that one as well. The next one's from Jono. He asks basically who I'd want to be or what I'd want to be if I was transported into the Necromunda setting in the 41st millennium. Grimdark choices only, nothing cushy. I don't think anything is cushy in the Underhive, so I certainly wouldn't go for a ganger sort of level. I'd probably go in as a Hive Scum or a Venator sort of bounty hunter, to be honest. You'd have a bit more autonomy and freedom, and I'd probably spend most of my time in drinking holes, smoking low sticks, and gambling away all my credits, to be honest. Otherwise, maybe out in the Ash Wastes with the Nomads, you'd have a bit more freedom, I suppose. You wouldn't have the crushing crushing weight of the enforcers on top of you or anything like that. Helmor's justice, but also on the flip side of that, you could kind of end up being an enforcer or something as well, and working your way up the ranks would be fairly nice as well. But yeah, none of it's very pleasant, but I'd probably go with just a Hive Scum or a Venator and a gun for hire. If a player approached you wanting to play dog models as Millosaurs or, squigs as bomb rats and orcs as corridor rules, is that cool as an arbitrator? Absolutely. I think proxying is totally fine as long as it sort of vaguely represents what the model is, I suppose. Size is an issue. Base size is an issue as well, as long as those base sizes are what they should be, I suppose. It's important, but, you know, I'm not really that tight on it. One thing I will say, though, is I just hate cute stuff in general. I'm a very typical bloke in that regard, and there's been a few Blood Bowl tournaments I've been to recently. I won't name any players who've had cutimals as Blood Bowl teams, and it is flipping awful. I hate it. I hate playing against little cutesy teams, so please don't do it. That's just my taste. I hate cute things. Nothing is cute. Everything should be grimdark. There you go. Are Spirers too strong in campaigns like Dominion? Should they be nerfed at creation? Asking because Spirers had a strong start in a campaign. Well, Spirers will have a strong start in a campaign because they are a strong gang to start with. However, they quickly get overtaken by all the other gangs as they buy equipment and weapons that can deal with Spirers. That's my take on Spirers. It really does depend how long a campaign is. But generally speaking, Spirers will start strong. However, if they lose a Spirer, they are f***ed. And also, you know, just set them on fire. This is my answer to Spirers. Just set them on fire. Corridor gangs are the enemy of Spirers. There is no way in hell that Spirers can avoid being set on fire. I don't think. They can't get any equipment like hazard suits. They can't respond to being set on fire. Sure, they can activate twice in a turn to try and put themselves out and stuff, but fire and blaze is the Spirer's worst enemy. Trust me. The next question, how much terrain is too much or too little? I've actually just done a video on this, which I'm just about to put out, so do go and check that out, but I would aim for 60 to 70% coverage on most boards. I hope that answers your question. Interesting question here from Josh. Would melee or close combat ever be fun? I assume you're sort of alluding to the fact that close combat in modern Necromunda isn't very good from a mechanic perspective. And honestly, I would actually agree with you there. I think close combat in a number of other Games Workshop systems is better. The way that initiative used to be used as a close combat sort of thing, you know, who hits first, stuff like that, I think should be brought in. And actually, this is a huge conversation that I would like to maybe do a video on at some point about how to make close combat great again, I suppose. Apologies for the Trump reference there, but make close combat great again. I do feel like it's the missing link in Necromunda, actually, in terms of the games. I think everything else is pretty sweet at the moment, but close combat, the actual problem with close combat isn't the rules necessarily, right? It's the power creep. So with close combat, what we've had initially when the game launched, we had gangers maybe with a pistol and a close combat weapon charging with average weapon skill into combat with another ganger. And often they'd have like 2 or 3 attacks maximum and they're hitting on 4s most of the time. That's fine. That works because a lot of the time, those attacks won't go through and the enemy will get reaction attacks, and it's pretty fair in that way. That said, now we've had so many power creep instances where we've got Nazguls, Death Maidens, things like that, that will literally one-shot you. What I mean by that is they have so many attacks with such high weapon skill and such powerful weapons, they'll just kill anything they charge. And it really is about who charges first. And that, I think, is a shame. So I'd like Necromunda, if it's going to be released again, to address this by maybe having a roll-off, some initiative, something like that, or dare I say it, actually making it a little bit more like Kill Team. I did just say that. I did just say Kill Team's close combat is arguably better than Necromunda. I hate saying it, and, I hope I don't go to hell for that, but it is what it is. I do feel like the current state of Necromunda's close combat is not great. So there you go. I hope that answers the question. Will it ever be fun again? Yes, but I think you're going to need to house rule it at the moment. And I'm not really sure at the moment how to go about that. So close combat is a weak link in Necromunda. Joe Hill asks, does Necromunda need a second edition? Well, this will be a third edition, actually, I'm assuming. Not with all new rules, but with a core rule book that consolidates all the random stuff scattered everywhere. Obviously not in the depth of the House of Things, and fixes a lot of well-known issues like the random trading post prices, various rules contradictions, etc. Well, they did do that. We had the sort of core rule book released not that long ago, and it did consolidate and clear up a lot of stuff. So there you go. Maybe you weren't playing before that point, but things were a bit of a mess before that point. The core rulebook came out. We've had lots of erratas and PDFs and stuff like that as well. Things are pretty tight, but this goes back to my last question. Close combat, I think, could be tidied up, and there are definitely some ambiguity and some odd rules in Necromunda that we could address. Whether or not it needs another edition, I don't think so personally. I mean, look what's happened to Horus Heresy. I'm just getting into Horus Heresy 3rd edition. I'm coming into it with a fresh lens, and I love the look of it. I've been watching battle reports. I love the look of it, but the community is really, really anti it. Anyone who played 2.0 Horus Heresy is losing their minds at the changes and the level of different stuff that they've brought into Horus Heresy 3.0. And it's a bit of a shame to see so much negativity around it. So I think if they did that with Necromunda, it'd probably be even worse because the community is so passionate about the game. So does it need a 3rd edition? No, not at the moment. But if we're on a 3-year cycle, then maybe that is round the corner at some point. I would like things just to be tidied up in general. So yeah, what you're saying, just tidying up some of the ambiguity and some of the loose rules, perhaps readdressing close combat, as it's definitely the one thing I think needs readdressing, and and bringing in scabbies and rat skins, of course. Alex asks, how does one get past the impossible obstacle of miniature and terrain storage in a hobby that's accumulative? Well, get a bigger house, I suppose, is the answer to that. Or just, there are 2 ways of dealing with this. You either get more storage somehow. What I've done is I've taken over half of my kitchen. I live in a 2-bedroom, fairly small house, and I don't have any storage. I've got a garage outside, which is terrible. It's damp. So a lot of the stuff that I don't really care about goes in there. Everything else, half of the kitchen is taken up with miniatures. And now I'm building a huge Horus Heresy army. That's going to get even worse. But what I do though, is I don't cling on to material things too much. You'll notice that I do actually sell off some of my old gangs that I've used in multiple campaigns, or sometimes give them away as prizes as well. But I'm lucky that I can do that, I suppose. But selling old stuff, honestly, it's just good to have a clear out every now and then and not just hoard everything, honestly. I don't like to have too much stuff, so getting rid of things as we go is usually my best solution for that, unless I, of course, had much more storage, in which case I'd probably keep it all. So there you go. Christopher Lind asks, if it was up to you, what would be the next big thing to come out for Necromunda after Bastions of Lore? Well, it wouldn't be the house gangs. I don't want to see new books for the house gangs, but I do fear that that's around the corner. I feel like the house gangs are going to get bloated a little bit, and I'm not really that keen on it. That said, I would like to see the inclusions of scabbies and ratskins at some point, and maybe even pit fighters. I don't understand the problem that people have with ratskins. I think it is virtue signaling, if I'm honest. You can... hang me in the comments for that if you like, but I just don't see a problem with them. If no one has a problem with White Scars being space Mongolians, then why should we have a problem with Native American slightly themed gangers? I just don't see a problem with it. So yeah, I'd like to see ratskins, scabbies, and pit fighters. Also, maybe some different settings. We've done Hive Sakundus now. Whether that's over or not, I'm not really sure. It'd be interesting to see if we can explore Hive Sakundus more. I'd like to. It seems a bit weird that Hive Secundus came out and then we just immediately moved on and forgot about it. So, bit strange, that one. Ash Waste has also been kind of forgotten about to a certain degree as well. So perhaps, the Eye of Selene would be the next logical place. I think the Eye of Selene would be really awesome. Having zero gravity, things like that, and cargo cults and all the stuff that we've seen mentioned before, I think that would be a really nice place to go. So yeah, maybe some of the other hives as well, Hive Mortis, the Skull, things like that as well. So it'd be really interesting to see where we go. But honestly, I don't really care at this point. I think the game is in a good state. The rules are mostly pretty good. The gangs are mostly getting pretty fleshed out, and more gangs would be great. But I'm pretty happy with everything the way it is at the moment. Adam asks, if you were to create an entirely new faction or house, what kind of flavour would they have, lore and play style? Well, I have been sort of toying with the idea of making some sort of community, factions, and I've done a little bit of work on this. One thing that I would like to do is almost like a servitor enclave, so a bunch of, almost like Ghost in the Shell. You've got like a technomancer of some sort that leads a bunch of mindless servitors and sort of automata. I think that would be quite a cool idea for a gang. Let me know if you think that's cool in the comments down below. I'd like to sort of maybe explore that a little bit more. Other things that you could do, of course, pit slaves never were a proper gang, so I'd like to see pit fighters, pit slave gangs fully done at some point as well, and I could certainly sort of start writing the rules for something like that as well. If you're interested in me doing stuff like that, then I'd like to start maybe writing some sort of community rules for maybe some new gangs and stuff. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about that, and I'll come up with some more ideas, I suppose. Israel asks, I've always wondered how Bulgorg wipes his arse, etc. Well, he doesn't. He has slaves that do it for him. I suppose he's kind of anti-slave, though, isn't he? He's like Spartacus, I suppose. But someone wipes his arse. It can't be him. He's got 2 chainswords for arms, so it's going to be uncomfortable doing it with a chainsword. So I'm imagining that, yeah, just some little Jew who worships him is going to do that. But yeah, interesting question. Food for thought. I will think on this one. Andrew asks on YouTube, do you believe we will be getting new house books? The reason I ask is Games Workshop seems to have a 3-year turnaround at present, and do you foresee new units for the 6 core houses? I've already alluded to the fact that I don't personally want that. You guys might. And, you know, it's interesting, I suppose, but I already feel like a lot of the gangs have this sort of paramilitary feel to them, which is a bit of a turn-off to me, which is why I often play other gangs, not the house gangs. And if I do play the house gangs, I kind of nerf them in some way or make them slightly more like old Necromunda in some ways, whether it's through the campaign mechanics or whatnot. But I do believe that we probably will get new house gangs. And I wouldn't be disappointed with it as such. I think it's still exciting, but I'd love to see some way of stripping it back again and taking it back to classic Necromunda, because I do prefer the vibe and the feeling of less equipment and poorer guys that need feeding and stuff. I just feel like current Necromunda has that, like I said, paramilitary sort of, everybody's tooled out to the max, and the 6 house gangs are just almost too fleshed out at this point. The lore is great, and I'd like to have more lore and stuff. Whether or not Necromunda is on a 3-year cycle or not, I don't think it is. You know, when you compare it to other Games Workshop systems, 40k, Age of Sigmar, things like that, which obviously are on a rolling 3-year thing, it seems like Heresy is heading that way, unfortunately, as well too. But I don't think Necromunda is. I really do feel like Andy Hoare, shout out to you, mate, if you're listening to this. This really is his baby, and this is the, you know, Games Workshop love Necromunda. You can tell, because the amount of stuff they put into the Forge World models and the, you know, the Apocrypha Necromunda, things like that. We are so lucky to get that stuff, and hopefully it continues. I do feel like Games Workshop's support for Necromunda has always been great, and it hasn't really waned since, you know, the re-release in 2017. It is a beloved game. Yes, it has a smaller template. There are less players playing Necromunda. My channel is a lot smaller than Kill Team channels and, you know, 40k channels and stuff, obviously, because I focus mainly on Necromunda. But, you know, it is in a good state. Games Workshop are supporting it. Whether or not it's on that 3-year thing, I'm not really sure about that. I don't think those are necessarily strict rules that they have. They may have that with other systems, but not really with Necromunda. Tanner G asks, what is the conflict sore spot you see most often between players? This is interesting. I don't see any conflict or sore spots between players, because the players I have in my campaign are really agreeable, nice people who don't tend to treat the game in any sort of like competitive sort of nature. But I have seen lots of arguments in the past, particularly about measuring distances, pre-measuring, things like that, which is a no-no. But also, you know, base sizes and cover is something that gets argued about a lot, whether someone is in soft or hard cover, etc. These are really straightforward rules, so there shouldn't really be any argument. Generally speaking, these arguments are always best solved. Instead of flicking through a million rule books, is just roll off for it. It's really that simple. Don't take Necromunda that seriously. It's not a competitive game. Just roll off for it if you're not sure. Simple. This is a great question, and again goes back to what I was saying about Sakundus earlier. Do you think that we've seen everything for Sakundus? Also, will we see a House of style book for Gene Stealer's Male Strain? First question, I hope we haven't seen everything for Sakundus. I'd like to see more. I think the setting is fantastic. The box set was a little bit underwhelming. The miniatures were great. The campaign, sort of solo campaign, was quite cool as well. But yeah, it's just fallen off. I don't really know where it's gone. Necromunda's in a weird state in terms of the lore at the moment, because we had the Aranthian succession. You know, things have gone on from there. But now we've just had Squats, Ash Waste Nomads, and Enforcers released. On the flip side to the Enforcers, and answering your second question, I suppose, would be Do we think there'll be a House of style book for Gene Stealers and Malstrain? No, but I think there probably will be a revisited book for perhaps the Chaos Gangs. Chaos Helots need an update. Corpse Grinders need an update. And hopefully Gene Stealer and Malstrain cults and stuff will be in there as well, just like the Book of Ruin that we had before. They might be asking too much. Will they put all that stuff into one book again, or will they drip feed it to us across many books? Probably, because it will make them more money. I hope we haven't seen everything for Sakundus. I think the setting is fantastic, like I said, and I'd like to see more stuff for Sakundus, whether it will be an equivalent to the tech hunters for each house gang. That was what was initially touted about. I think people have abandoned that idea now, though, because we've had the 3 most recent squats, Ashwaste, Nomads, and Enforcers. Who knows? I hope not, though. If you could have Games Workshop make a model for anything in Necromunda lore that currently doesn't have one, what would it be? Mad Donna Ulanti, Bulgorg, or Karloff Valois. There you go. 3 classic Necromunda characters that need to be brought back in. There you go. That's the answer to that question. Easy. Especially Bulgorg, because he never actually had an official model. The other 2 did. So answer number 1, Bulgorg. The next question is, do you have any relationship with Mortime? Yes, I do. What would you think of it being updated in parallel with Necromunda in the same way that both their earlier versions also felt like sister games? Well, they were sister games, absolutely right. They had the same core mechanics. Necromunda was first. It came out in 1995, and I believe Mortime was 97 or 98. Both games were awesome. Personally, I'm more of a sci-fi setting than a fantasy setting person, so I always preferred Necromunda. I enjoy playing old Mortime, but I do feel like the rules now don't really stack up to modern games. Again, people might hang me for this in the comments, but Mortime is dated and the rules are reflecting that. I think alternate activations in Mortime would be awesome. I'd love to see Mortime re-released. I would totally buy it and I would totally be playing it. Will it be? Well, there is hope with the Old World stuff, I suppose. Games Workshop sales are through the roof for Old World. Old World is doing so well, apparently. It's doing better than most game systems they've got at the moment, I believe. So with that, I suppose that means that Mortime would certainly, if it's still Old World, that is, then some version of Mortime would do very well. And yes, I think having the sort of modern mechanics, maybe the group activations and stuff would be great. Warcry was kind of, a placeholder for Mortime for a little while, if you ask me. It felt very different, but, Warcry was a fantastic game. Honestly, it really was. For any of those of you who played Warcry, it was a brilliant, brilliant game. It was really easy to play. It was more of a beer and pretzels game, but I loved the mechanics for it, particularly the initiative dice, things like that. I thought it was really good. But that was Age of Sigmar sort of setting. So it would be nice to see something more substantial in the Old World setting. I really do hope we get Mortime at some point. But I'll still be playing Necromunda a lot more because it is my true love. Dr. Fishy asking here, will Wellywood Wargaming ever go down the 3D printing path with custom terrain, miniatures, and gaming accessories? Well, it's funny you should say that, but yeah, I am absolutely looking at investing in getting some sets of dice done and things like that. So I just need to get the cash together for that. I am broke at the moment, so I'm just going to sell my house first. So we'll see if we can do that. But in terms of the other stuff, I'd like to say that Tempest Terrain, shout out to Tempest Terrain, and I are working together on a combat gauge as well as a few other things. So do go check out Tempest Terrain. You will see bits and bobs and doodads used in my battle reports and stuff coming up soon. The combat gauge is flipping awesome. So I'm really, really happy about that. And I hope you guys want to get one actually, because they are really cool. But Tempest Terrain, go check them out. Awesome dudes over in the UK. And yes, there is more around the corner. I'm going to do some stuff. I'm not going to do any sort of blatant rip-offs of Necromunda stuff. I'm certainly not going to be doing any 3D miniatures or anything, but I do think I'd like to go into the paraphernalia of wargaming, whether it's just Necromunda, doing range rulers, templates, things like that, and also dice. I think that's totally fair. I probably won't go down the route of actually doing miniatures at any point, though, because I feel like I like Games Workshop miniatures too much, so there you go. This is probably the best question of the bunch here. Would you rather live in the Underhive or Great Yarmouth? Well, I know Norfolk very well, and I can tell you I would rather live in the Underhive. So hopefully that answers your question. People in Great Yarmouth are inbred. to say the least. That is the most simple way of putting it. They are inbred. They have the weirdest accent. Gear at Yarmouth. And the Underhive is probably less inbred and probably safer as well, to be honest. So yes, the answer to that, Underhive over Great Yarmouth all day. Mr. Woolley asks, what's your take on house favours and how often should they be used, if at all? I'm actually about to do a series on house favours at some point soon. It's on the list of things to get through. I think they're brilliant. I think they offer a lot of fluff and fun and stuff. The trouble is, I think, if you're starting out in Necromunda, if you haven't played mini campaigns, leave them till afterwards. They add another level of complexity onto an already complex game. So I hope that answers your question. Same with alliances. And things like that as well. These are things that you can roll into a campaign later on when you're more familiar with the core rules, or you can even, in fact, like swap things out, you know. And I do think favours are pretty good. They're a good sort of balancing mechanic. Some of them are too good, some of them are not very good. So it's down to arbitrators to choose which ones they can use and whatnot. But generally speaking, I think they're really great and well designed, and often an overlooked part of Necromunda, actually. Another question here is, where should you draw the line between good and too OP? It's common sense, isn't it, really? I know that's a sort of cheap answer, but like, you know if you're taking the piss or not. If you've got a whole gang of just guys with plasma guns, you know if you're taking the piss. If you're spamming stuff, or if you're going for the ultimate combos and everything, if you've got every dude in your Goliath gang's got nerves of steel, then you're taking the piss. If you've got a whole gang of Escher guns for 5 credits, then you're taking the piss. There are things that you can do but probably shouldn't do. The hand flamer spam on corpse grinder initiative, stuff like that, that is all OP. Doesn't mean you can't play with it. Like if other players in your playing group are also similar minded and also want to sort of go with that sort of OP meta chasing idea for Necromunda, then sure. But I mean, really, they should probably be playing Kill Team or 40k or something that actually does fit that, I suppose, a bit better. Necromunda is a narrative game. I tend to find that I usually limit myself. I will always look at a gang and go, is this too powerful? What could I limit? How could I handicap myself in a way that's both narrative and also just more fun to play against? Think of your opponent. Okay, this is the answer. Think of your opponent. Is your opponent going to have a good time to play against your gang? If the answer is no, if they're going to find it A, boring, or B, oppressive, or both, then dial it back a bit. That should be the answer to your question. Another question here is an interesting one. My friends and I are playing a new campaign, and we have been having a bit of difficulty with how we'd be able to stay somewhat equal to each other due to the exponential growth of the Enforcer members. After someone is hired, their numbers can never go lower than that due to fresh recruits. Well, two things. Rookies are terrible and they aren't going to break the world or anything. Yes, it's cool that enforcers can't go below that number, but they're making up for it with Juves, basically with stub guns, and they're not very powerful. So it shouldn't be that much of a problem unless you're playing a very long campaign, for example. But I don't really see a huge problem with that. That said, obviously we have a new book coming out in a few weeks or months, and that might all change. So you don't know. I have a strong feeling that Enforcers will be far more integrated with Dominion campaigns and all sorts of other campaigns, better than they ever have been when this book launches. So hold tight for this, because I do feel like Enforcers will be much more complete and much more fair, I suppose, in campaigns. So wait for that to happen before we make any sort of judgments on it. Next question is a sore subject for me, if I'm honest. Would you consider doing another Lord of the Rings video or a Star Wars video or anything like that? I'm sure you will have seen lots of content creators. The problem with doing content that's specifically usually, like for me, I'm a Necromunda channel mainly, right? So people think of me as a Necromunda guy, but it isn't my only game. I play Horus Heresy, I play Blood Bowl a lot at tournament level and stuff like that. I play Lord of the Rings, I play a bunch of other games, and I love them almost as much as Necromunda. I have tried to branch out and do content on other things. I did a how to play guide for Lord of the Rings, and it flopped massively. I spent so much time on it. It took me ages editing it. I thought, this is going to be awesome. People are really going to like this. And those that watched it really liked it, but it just didn't get any sort of like traction really. And I'm not in it for just the likes and stuff like that, but it is demoralizing when you put a lot of work into something that you're passionate about and the community just goes, nah, don't like it, it's not Necromunda. I'm not going to whinge about it, because I'm very happy to be where I am with Necromunda, but the problem with that is I'm at a stage now where I want to branch out to do other things. I really do. But I'm finding it really hard to do so because every time I do, it doesn't do so well. Or what I'm finding as well is the more effort I put into a video, I put a lot of time and effort into this channel, by the way, a lot on top of my life as well. And the more effort I seem to put in, the less reward I get for it. So often just doing the same formula over and over again, even though it does well and people enjoy it and stuff, it's not as gratifying for me. So I'm at that sort of impasse at the moment where I can't really figure out how to go about branching out a little bit and whether you guys will actually embrace that or not, because generally speaking, it doesn't seem to be happening. So I'd like to be able to do it. Does it mean I should start a second channel? I'm not really sure. I see a lot of other creators doing that, but also the algorithm just doesn't push it as hard either. And that's something else to talk about, is the algorithms and stuff. But you're not here for that. You're here for the answers to Necromunda questions. So we're going to move on now. Another good question on YouTube here. Do you think Games Workshop will ever release some regular Hiver model civilians? I would love that, but I can't see them doing it, honestly. That said, you know, you never know. We've had all the hangers-on and hired guns released through Forge World and stuff, but they are playable characters in games, whereas the civilians and stuff aren't. I'd like to see more of a fleshed-out Hive Scum box, because the Hive Scum stuff that you get is great, but you could do a lot more with that, I suppose. But yeah, will Games Workshop ever release some regular Hiver models? You know, shop vendors, things like that would be awesome, but I don't think they will. There are some really good sort of 3D printers and third-party vendors that do stuff like this, though, so it's worth looking out there for that stuff, because you can easily find stuff on Cults 3D or wherever else for stuff like this, or just convert your own stuff up and add some bare hands to things and some burger flippers and things like that as well. Will Games Workshop do it, though? Probably not. Next question, Brother Peregrinus on Instagram, shout out to you. Ever run a full Rattling Venators gang? Did a first game with 10 of them yesterday. It was pretty interesting. Yes, in answer to your question, and it's waiting to be released. I have done a battle report on Venator Rattlings against Venator Beastmen. It is fantastic. I had so much fun filming this battle report. It's actually the most fun battle report I ever filmed. It's coming out on Wednesday. And yeah, go check that out, because I was really, really happy with the results of that. It took me 12 hours to record and edit. But yeah, it was awesome. I really, really enjoyed every minute of it. Rattlings are very, very good. The ballistic skill, the cost of the guys is really, really cheap, but they're very, very fragile. So I'm not going to answer that question in full, because I want you to watch the battle report and figure out what you think about Rattling gangs, because it doesn't necessarily go the way you might think it would. The Beastmen are very, very good as Venators, and the Rattlings are also very, very good. I'm not going to tell you who wins, though. You're going to have to guess this one. Big Wookie asks, I'm reading Fire Made Flesh currently, and it's an excellent Necromunda, but also 40k novel. I agree. It's probably the best Necromunda novel out there, to be honest. I love the idea of the discovery of blah, 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 blah. Why aren't there more Necromunda novels? And if something new were to be written, what would you like to see? I read a lot of Black Library stuff, but it's mainly Horus Heresy, to be honest. I am hard for Heresy. I would like to read more good Necromunda books, because I do feel that generally most of the Necromunda books that have come out over time have been a little bit corny or just not that well written. Fire Made Flesh was an exception. It's a fantastic book, so go and read it if you haven't. But yeah, the answer to that question is, why don't they make more Necromunda books? Because Necromunda just doesn't sell as much as other books. People want 40k and they want Horus Heresy, and that's why. You don't get many Blood Bowl books either. You don't get many Kill Team books, things like that either. I mean, the setting is, you know, we all know and love the setting of Necromunda. It is so awesome, and they certainly do have the scope to do more of it. I just don't think it would sell as much, honestly, and that's probably the only answer I can give there. But I would like to see higher quality, better writers doing Necromunda novels going forwards. What would I like to see in those? Maybe, yeah, exploring some of the much more darker elements of Necromunda. You know, the scavies and the deep sump and things like that, and the rat skins, stuff like that, I'd like to see more of as well, but we probably won't get it anytime soon, unfortunately. Anyway, I'm going to keep it there for now. I haven't answered all of your questions. Again, thank you for sending me so many of these questions. That's probably about half of them, actually, so there are a lot more that I could answer. I just picked some of the ones that stood out to me there, so apologies if I didn't get your questions answered there. Please do, like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon as well, and I will be back with another regular video real soon. Thanks for watching. Peace out.